Eyewitness News is everywhere. This is Channel 3 Eyewitness News at 6.
Obviously, mistakes have been made throughout the last few years, and I accept responsibility for those.
From governor to criminal, John Rowland pleads guilty to a federal corruption charge. Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Dennis House.
And I'm Kara Sundlun in for Denise DeCenzo. Here is the latest right now. This morning, John Rowland pleaded guilty to one corruption charge in a plea deal with federal prosecutors. He admits to failing to pay taxes on gifts that he accepted from friends and business partners while he was governor. It is now up to a judge whether Rowland will go to prison. And we have live team coverage tonight from the Capitol to the courthouse. In a moment, Eric Parker explains how long the former governor will go to prison.
Susan Raff has reaction from state lawmakers. But we begin with Channel 3 Eyewitness News reporter Pei-Sze Cheng, live with the mobile newsroom outside New Haven Federal Court. Pei-Sze?
Well, Dennis and Kara, on the surface it appears that the former governor may have pleaded guilty to a count of tax evasion. But really what we're looking at is that he's pleading guilty to not paying taxes on gifts that he received illegally from companies that were hired to do work for the state. Eyewitness News was there when former Governor Rowland and his wife Patty walked into New Haven Superior Court this morning, just before he admitted what he previously was unable to.
Obviously, mistakes have been made throughout the last few years, and I accept responsibility for those.
Rowland pleaded guilty to receiving gifts from companies that did work for the state and not paying taxes on those gifts. As part of the plea deal, Rowland admitted that in '98, the Tommaso Group did work on his Bantam Lake cottage at no charge. And in February of 2000, Rowland admitted he told the DOT commissioner to sign an agreement for the construction of a parking garage at Bradley Airport, which benefited the Tommaso Group. Accepting lavish vacations and flights on private airplanes were among the other offenses listed.
He's been able to put this at long last behind him to really protect the interests of those closest to him.
As a convicted felon, Rowland could lose his right to vote, his right to bear arms, and his right to hold public office.
But I think that this plea agreement is in the best interest of my family, and I think it's in the best interest of the state to get on with their business.
Now, nowhere in this plea deal does it say anything about former Governor Rowland having to cooperate with federal agents when prosecuting future cases, which the prosecutor says is definitely on the way. Joining us right now from the New Haven newsroom is Channel 3 Eyewitness News reporter Eric Parker. He's here to tell us a little more about how the attorneys reached this deal.
Pei-Sze, at this point, John Rowland is set to be sentenced in March. Now, that could be pushed back because could be pushed back if there have to be some changes. If he does decide to testify against some of the other people involved in this case, then it will be pushed back until after that happens. It could also be pushed back if the lawyers involved need some more time to prepare. But we did talk to some legal experts today, and they say the bottom line is eventually John Rowland will spend some time in prison.
Effective at noon on July 1st, I will officially step down as governor and pass this honor on to Lieutenant Governor Jody Rell.
Nearly 6 months after leaving office, John Rowland says he is guilty of conspiracy, a move that will likely guarantee him some prison time. But it should get him less time than if he were convicted at trial.
When you go in and fall on your sword in the federal system, acknowledge your guilt, and accept responsibility for the crime, it reduces the severity of the offenses.
Many factors will play into the sentence. Rowland's lawyer is expected to argue that the former governor's 25 years of public service should earn him some leniency. Rowland could also cut down on his sentence by testifying against the others charged in the case. The federal sentencing system tries to make sure offenders get the appropriate punishment based on the severity of their crime. Former U.S. Attorney Stan Twardy says figuring that out in this case will be a lot tougher than in other types of criminal cases.
Yeah, the drug case, 1 kilo against 2 kilos is pretty simple. If it's a bank embezzlement, is it $100,000 or $5 million that's been stolen? Here, you know how much he was given in gifts, but part of the sentencing guideline, the whole sentencing concept is making amends to the victims. How do you make amends to the citizens of the state of Connecticut? How do you quantify that in this case?
Now, since these are federal charges, Rowland will serve almost all of whatever time he is sentenced to. There is no federal parole. The only time he can save is 54 days each year that he is sentenced. That will be saved on good behavior. Now, because he will almost certainly be sentenced to less than 10 years in prison, he will be eligible for a federal prison camp. That means barrack-style living, no bars, and it means many of the things he'll be doing will be done on the honor system. Right now, former Bridgeport Mayor Joe Ganim is in a prison camp in Fort Dix, New Jersey. The closest one to Connecticut is in Otisville, New York. That is about 2 hours from Hartford. We're live in New Haven. Eric Parker, Channel 3, Eyewitness News.
Some Democrats are already using Rowland's new criminal record as ammunition in the next governor's race. They've not won the state's highest office since 1986, and they see 2006 as a big opportunity. They've already begun criticizing Governor Rowland. Our team coverage continues now with Channel 3 Eyewitness News reporter Susan Raff.
Democratic Party Chairman George Jepsen is questioning what Governor Jody Rowland knew about John Rowland. Tonight, he has this to say about former Governor Rowland's guilty plea. Governor Rowland, he says, certainly has to, I think, directly answer the questions of how she could have sat there for 9.5 years and watched everything go on and say nothing, meanwhile watching other people point things out. Jepsen also is stepping down from the Democratic Party, and there's speculation he may run for Attorney General. Governor Jody Rowland has insisted repeatedly that she did not know her then boss, Governor John Rowland, was involved in corruption. Today, we asked Senate Republicans if the guilty plea has damaged their party.
I think that the Republican Party, the last number of years, has been damaged in a few ways, and this obviously didn't help this past year. But Governor Rowland has done wonders in restoring faith in government, faith in the governor's office, faith for people throughout the state.
We have continuing coverage now on Rowland's guilty plea. Coming up later in this newscast, the governor's pension. Will he still collect a check from the state even though he is now a criminal? And Rowland's legacy. How will he be remembered? We'll take a look back at his accomplishments in the state he served for a quarter of a century.
Now to the latest on our big story tonight. Former Governor John Rowland has pleaded guilty to a federal corruption charge. Even though Rowland is now a convicted felon, he will still collect a paycheck from the state of Connecticut. Eyewitness News obtained the governor's application for retirement. It shows he's served exactly 10 years and will be eligible for a pension when he turns 55 on May 24th, 2012. Under state law, every governor gets a $5,000 pension for every year they serve. That means Rowland will earn $50,000 a year, plus health benefits, in 8 years from now. Earlier this month, Lieutenant Governor Kevin Sullivan announced that he would ask the legislature to change the state law to take away pensions from state workers who are convicted of corruption.
The premise is that we have an expectation of not only competent performance, but we have an expectation of ethical performance in public service.
The General Assembly is back in session on January 5th, but that is too late to take away Rowland's pension.
John Rowland was elected to 3 terms as governor, the last 2 in landslides. He was one of the most popular politicians the state has ever seen. But that was then, and this is now. Today's developments will most certainly tarnish his legacy. John Rowland the criminal or John Rowland the governor? How will he make it into the history books?
I do solemnly swear.
Supporters say Rowland should be remembered for big public projects like the university system and revitalizing Connecticut cities. In New London, he helped Pei-Sze build a multi-million-dollar plant and pushed to build the city's waterfront. Rowland also favored big development in New Haven, where he planned to see a new community college downtown. Last month, the former governor attended the grand opening of the Palace Theater in Waterbury. The Brass Mill Center was also built under his watch, and a brand new UConn campus downtown. In East Hartford, there is Rentschler Field, credited with getting UConn football into the Big East Conference, allowing them to reach their first bowl game. And in Hartford, there were several projects, namely Adrian's Landing, Rowland's big plan to bring people to the capital city.
I think that those kinds of projects, should they be successful, would be part of his legacy. The question will be, will people want to attach his name to those achievements after he's gone? In other words, have these troubles really undermined his ability to have the kind of legacy he otherwise would have had?
John Rowland's place in the history books may also come from the state Supreme Court, and he appointed 3 of those justices. In July, the justices ruled that Rowland had to testify in front of the investigation committee investigating impeachment. Rowland resigned 3 days later, and that was the first time the state Supreme Court had ruled that a sitting governor would have to testify.